The Geekbench numbers got bigger, but what does that mean for you? Hey there, this episode of Some Gadget Guy is brought to you by you. Yes, viewers like you, all of the incredible folks sharing content across social media, and the amazing generosity of my patrons at patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. More info on those incredible nerds later in the video. Google is actually pretty good at this, delivering later updates that find ways to scrape out a little more performance from their phones. The most recent update, stretching back to the Pixel 6 series, is getting some positive buzz for improving benchmark scores in apps like Geekbench. I was curious to see if this update would also improve performance for real-world apps that I use regularly, so I reran my tests on both the Pixel 7 Pro and the Pixel 9 Pro XL with some interesting results. I just said interesting in a really interesting way. Starting off with some graphics performance, running around a Fantasyland exploration game like Wilderless, which has really granular PC-like options for graphic settings, I don't see much difference before and after the update. In Geekbench, I'm getting roughly a 23% improvement to GPU scores, but an app like Wilderless still struggles to keep frame rates in the 40s at the top resolution supported by the game and in ultra placebo quality graphics. To put this in perspective, the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, which I still think needs some more polish and a few more updates to improve overall system performance here too, this phone currently drives Wilderless at more than double the resolution and maintains a significantly higher and more consistent frame rate. I'm not digging too hard into gaming on the Pixels, as I don't think that's what a Pixel is for. These can play some games, but nobody should seriously be recommending a Pixel if a primary use would be graphics-intense gaming. The other title that I'm using to show off performance more these days is Grid Legends, and we can't install it on Tensor-powered phones yet. I don't run a ton of game benchmarking. I like to keep an eye on it to see what we can do with our pocket computers, but what I like to focus on is a consistent collection of real-world apps that you can also use on your phone to get more computery work done. Video editing, photo editing, audio recording and mixing, and a little file compression. If Pixels are advertised as good phones for capturing memories, making little content projects, then we'd hope to see some improvements to those activities with these higher Geekbench graphics scores. Running my 1-minute project through LumaFusion, we see no change on the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and sadly, the Pixel 7 Pro has gotten a little slower after this update. The Pixel 7 Pro was interesting when it launched. It scored low on Geekbench compared to other premium phones. But for a short time, it was the fastest phone on the market at chewing up 4K video in apps like CapCut and LumaFusion, even outpacing the iPhone on video editing apps that were better optimized for iOS. Unfortunately, the Pixel 7 Pro is now slower than it was at launch, but it's still delivering the same results as the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Doing a simple video trim in Google Photos does show an encouraging improvement. Where I take a 3-minute video and I trim it down to a 2-minute video, the Pixel 9 Pro XL achieved an 11% improvement in cutting this video down and saving a new file. Now comfortably mid 30 seconds, which is solid. That's a good improvement. Sadly, I missed this test on the Pixel 7 Pro before running the update. The last time I ran this test on the Pixel 7, Google Photos had not yet been updated to improve this video editing performance, and cutting down this project video often took longer than it would take to just play the video. Now the Pixel 7 Pro is running this in 38 seconds to the Pixel 9's 34 seconds. And while I am happy to see generational improvements, it's tough getting overly excited about a 10% improvement over 2 phone generations. That's usually what we see yearly on MediaTek and Qualcomm chips. Moving on, in my audio mixing test, both phones are in margin of error territory. My timed test to mix down a 1-hour podcast has gotten a little slower. I ran each test a couple of times and still ended up with plus or minus a half-second difference, so I'm going to say practically that this is a wash after the update. We would not be able to detect any significant difference except for scientifically measuring down to a fraction of a second. But my file compression results, that's where things got a bit weird. Running a RAR test, the Pixel 9 Pro improved by roughly 10%. Which is really good for an update. That's a single-year generational improvement. People like to roll their eyes at tests like file compression, but folks really don't understand how valuable it is on a mobile device to squish and unpack files quickly. It impacts so many areas of your daily life, and often when you're waiting on a file transfer or sending a photo or a video to a friend, one of the things slowing you down is poor file compression performance. But this is good. A one generation improvement just over a software update, that's the stuff we like to see. But what's kind of wild here, the Pixel 7 Pro before the update was roughly the same speed as the Pixel 9 Pro's improved score. And the Pixel 7 Pro after the update was 17% faster than the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Google has delivered an almost 2-generation downgrade in file compression that I can test with a real app compressing real files. RAR also has a built-in synthetic benchmark that aligns decently close to the benchmark on their Windows version, and in that synthetic test, there's virtually no performance difference between Tensor 2 and Tensor 4. And lastly, in a crazy batch photo processing test, PhotoMate R3 can batch process RAW files like Lightroom. I use this test to not only look at performance, but also throttling. I'm running a real-world app that everybody can use, but for this test, I'm running it in a slightly unrealistic fashion. I want to see the speed of every file get processed, but I also want a measurable way to see how these phones slow down over a consistent and replicatable task. The Pixel 9 got slower in this test after the update, but it held on to a decent lead over the Pixel 7 Pro, about 15% faster overall. That said, the Pixel 7 Pro started out processing photos slower, but it maintained a more consistent performance over the course of the whole test. The Pixel 9 throttled roughly 7% from start to finish, which is really good. That's honestly really good against MediaTek and Qualcomm right now. But the Pixel 7 Pro only throttled 3%. It picked a better speed to just coast, and it kind of stuck with that, keeping the phone from getting radically hot by the completion of the test. And I'm throwing a lot at you. What do all of these numbers mean? Ultimately, I still have to hold up Geekbench and Antutu as very poor predictors of real-world app performance. You can get huge scores in either app, and that rarely translates into actual performance wins for the apps you can use daily on your phones. In Qualcomm versus MediaTek right now, Snapdragon often takes the top overall synthetic scores, but Dimensity dominates in content creation apps, and it's not close. A 5% win for Qualcomm and Antutu equates to a 40% faster render time for Dimensity in CapCut and LumaFusion. Cool, cool, cool. Real cool. Very cool that we're spending so much time in our reviews talking about Antutu and Geekbench scores. What we see? It's very easy to optimize for a synthetic benchmark and maybe a handful of games and get some bigger numbers there. Optimization matters, and we should be excited to see some individual app performance updates. But we should not use that to make an overall purchasing decision, especially for any folks out there who really want to know their dollars are going to more useful practical power across the entire experience. It's not terribly difficult to tweak a chip to get better Geekbench scores, and we've also seen numerous manufacturers outright rig performance for better scores, while consumers absolutely do not get any performance benefits in real-world apps. Look at that Samsung whitelist from a couple years back. And to help put this into some context, as a general trend from my tracking this kind of data over almost 10 years now, it seems more big cores are better than a single big core chip design. Some of you might remember how positive I was on the Pixel 6 and 7 series phones and now wonder, why am I so critical of the Pixel 9 series? Over that time, Google switched from a 2 big older core CPU design to a 1 newer big core designed for Tensor 4. I can't perfectly explain why, but again, very generally, as I look at a decade of performance tests, the apps that start out better optimized for iOS perform better when they can use more big cores. That's why a Pixel 7 can still hang with the Pixel 9 in CapCut, but a MediaTek Dimensity absolutely brutalizes a Snapdragon 8 Elite in that app. I can't perfectly explain the exact function behind the trend, but that is the trend we see consistently looking at these generational improvements. More big core better. In the Pixel 7 era, Google would lose all of these synthetic tests but score significant wins in actual apps. The Pixel 7 Pro arrived at a price undercutting the Galaxy S22 Plus by $100, and it was more powerful at editing multimedia and had significantly better cameras than the S22 Plus. The Pixel 7 Pro was an incredible value for content-focused individuals. The Pixel 9 Pro has better overall thermal performance, better radios, is slightly faster at audio editing, is functionally the same at editing video, and is somehow slower at file compression. They're both called Pros, but this is a premium tier phone, and now this is priced in that Ultra League. The Pixel, as a pocket companion computer, really hasn't progressed much over 2 generations of phone, while MediaTek and Qualcomm have both gotten radically more powerful over that same period of time. Now, we could forgive this if the phones were still a great value, which unfortunately, that hasn't held either. MSRP to MSRP, the Pixel 9 Pro XL is now an ultra-priced phone. It undercuts the Galaxy S25 Ultra by $100 at the same storage. But even though I despise Samsung as a corporation, even I have to admit, you get a ton more bang for your buck with the Galaxy than you do the Pixel 9 Pro XL. The Pixel 7 Pro was a brutally good premium phone value. The Pixel 9 Pro XL is one of the worst performing Ultra phones per dollar selling over this last year. Even with some performance improvements from this last update, the Pixel 9 Pro XL largely lands somewhere in between the performance of a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 and 8 Gen 2. When you buy Google's most expensive phone, you're getting performance roughly in the ballpark of a 2 to 3 generation old Snapdragon-powered device. This makes my recommendation on a Pixel more difficult than when we were in the Pixel 7 days. We know Pixels are not good options for gamers. And the things that make a Pixel, like the really heavy crowd-pleasing HDR photo processing or the call screening and spam rejection features, can be found on less expensive Pixels. So the people who aren't likely to tax phone hardware probably won't notice significant differences between a Pixel Pro, a Pixel 9, or a Pixel A series. If people care about performance and battery and radio reception, they should probably be shopping Qualcomm and MediaTek. If they care about average consumer point-and-shoot photos and getting less spam, well, average consumers aren't spending over $1,000 on Android phones. They should be shopping somewhere between the Pixel A and the Pixel 9. That's the right fit for them, especially with Google moving more and more functionality up to cloud services. That also further dampens why someone would recommend a Pixel Pro. Off the top of my head, I guess the telephoto camera? That is good, but depending on price and sales, that could be a $200 feature that is not keeping pace with Vivo and Xiaomi right now. But I've gotten a little off track. I'm a ways off script here. I want to wrap this up and acknowledge that this is probably a tough video for some of you Pixel fans out there. My point in making this is not to tell an individual consumer that you should like your phone less. You love your Pixel 9 Pro XL? I want you to love the tech you buy and the tech you use. But over the last several years, what passes for tech commentary seems more a function of marketing. When companies spend billions on marketing their products, those products tend to get better reviews. Google radically stepped up their marketing efforts. The phones have not changed significantly over the last several years. The reviews have gotten significantly more positive. This stuff is fun. Tech should be fun, but it's also getting silly expensive. And I don't see where we're getting that value for our money. even accounting for inflation. We should love this, but look around at your family and friends. Are they excited to buy a new phone? Or is it an exhausting chore now? I want you to love what you buy, but I personally feel you can only do that if you really understand what it is that you're buying. My audience is not and never will be mass market so-called average consumers. I'm desperate to find those folks who play tech support in their families, and the people like me who are responsible for resetting auntie's router every year over Thanksgiving. You're the people who will understand that maybe for the needs of your family and friends, someone would actually prefer a mid-ranger phone for the experience and the better battery life, and it'll just be a nice perk that those phones also cost less. You're the folks who understand that rapidly opening and closing apps in a review is not any indication of phone performance. It's just some kind of spastic visual stimulus for a video. Phones are not one thing. Some are better at productivity, some at gaming, some at content creation, some just basic communication. Some are ridiculous purpose-built appliances for disaster prep, and some are laptop replacements. I've been saying this for years, and it's getting more and more desperate. We've got to stop talking about phones like they're one kind of thing, and we've got to start talking about these more like we talk about laptops or automobiles. I don't care how average you think consumers are, there is not one accepted way to smartphone. And it's on us techies. We're largely responsible for this gap in communication. Tech reviewers like to act that we're in a post-performance phone market because it makes their job reviewing phones easier. It's taken so much time out of my life to track video and podcast editing scores. Time that I would rather be doing anything else, like maybe editing my own family videos or recording my own podcasts on my amazingly powerful pocket computers. And I don't know, maybe we are in a post-performance world for entry-level and mid-ranger phones. Maybe, I don't know. I just don't believe that's true as prices climb higher and higher and higher, especially over $1,000. I still believe significant performance differences should matter, unless all you care about is what label you're showing the neighbors. I can't comment on that. Tech as fashion is not really my vibe. I want those people to be happy with their phone purchases too, but that's not the kind of conversation I can host. There's a spectrum of phone recommendations, and someone who really needs a niche device should be able to find that information and see a reviewer who's happy that there's a niche solution for that audience member's needs. They should not see a major YouTube channel knock a phone because they know it won't be as popular. And that means I won't make as much money on a video of that phone because it'll have a smaller audience. And to that point, as I do finally close this out, there are still people I would recommend a Pixel 9 Pro XL to. But that list is dramatically shorter than where we were 2 years ago. If the Pixel is to represent a mass market, average consumer device, I don't feel this is progress, even with a nice little performance improvement on our last update. And for this video, I've tried to keep this mostly an examination of Pixel devices and a fair oranges to oranges comparison on tensors, but I have made some passing references to other phones and other chips. The folks who get to see more of my testing and comparison data and analysis are, of course, my amazing patrons. All of the folks over on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list of names scrolling by on your screen right now, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart, as these are the folks that are helping to keep the lights on here in the Gadget Lab, and they get exclusive access to my benchmark articles and my camera deep dives. They're basically the coolest tech pals in the universe, so I hope you'll check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet at SomeGadgetGuy, basically everywhere, but these days, trying to spend a bit more time on the Mastodons, a little on the Blueskis, and a lot less so on the Facebooks and the Threads and the Instagrams, and not at all on that dumpster fire site, and I will catch you all on the next video.